Okay, and we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's normative webinar session, Unlocking Value, the Power of CDP Reporting. My name is Siddharthan Ghosh, and I'm excited to be your host today. I'm joined by Dr. Alexander Schmidt, our industry expert advisor on climate policy, standards, and ecosystem, and Luzia Buchmann from our climate strategy advisory team, dedicated to guiding our customers through SBTi approval, helping them orchestrate supply engagement and build carbon reduction roadmaps for our customers. Before we kick off though, I'd like to run through some housekeeping items. This webinar will last approximately 30 minutes. It will be recorded, so anyone who's registered for the webinar will receive an on-demand recording via email straight after this session. On the bottom right corner of your screen, you should be able to see a questions tab. We encourage you all to ask any questions for the speakers today, and we will endeavor to answer them during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Dr. Alex will give a brief introduction into normative and also cover the constants in the world of reporting. Luzia will also give an overview on how to prepare for disclosure networks, for disclosure frameworks. I will then come back on stage and I will cover a short Q&A session after the presentation. Alex, the virtual floor is now over to you.
Thank you so much, Sid. Thanks for the intro. I see we're still having people coming in, so that's amazing. I would love also to encourage everyone to use the chat, where you can share a bit like, who are you, where you're dialing in from. It's always interesting for us to get an understanding as to where you're coming from. Could be industry, company, country, city, where you're sitting at. So just feel free to share and say quickly hi to everyone over there. But as Sid already said, there's a separate questions tab. So to make our lives easier, it would be appreciated if you use the questions tab to separate the questions from the general chat. But otherwise, since we have no other means through which we can otherwise interact with you, please use the chat to share your thoughts. And again, also say hi to everyone, share where you're coming from. We only have 30 minutes today, so let's make the most of our time, your time especially. So thank you all for dialing in. For example, Susan from the UK, that's great. Wales also here, that's amazing. So keep coming your background information so we can gather a bit of a feeling for who's sitting on the other side of the screen. Quickly about normative. Normative has been around for quite some time to transform the E in ESG into strategic advantage. So always, me as an independent advisor, I always like to emphasize for companies, it is so crucial to start on this journey because it is not anymore any kind of nice marketing touch that you can put in your company that is a nice to have. It has to be integral part of your overall strategy to get hold of this tricky thing that is the E. Not just for reporting issues or reporting burden, which we're going to dive into a bit further today, but also because of business resilience. And clearly, like, where do you see your business in 10 years from now? If you don't get hold of the E, so environmental impact assessments, climate risks, chances are you have some struggles down the road. Again, normative has really been founded on the basis of scientific knowledge more than 10 years ago now. By then, it was honestly quite difficult to get customers and people on board and motivated because the time was still a bit, or normative was a bit ahead of its time. But by now, I was very happy to witness normative growing to more than 150 people with some great investors backing normative's cause. And I'm very happy and grateful that I can still support the organization as an external independent advisor. Now, there are a lot of crucial partnerships that normative has built up over the time. You see one of the logos here that rings a bell, CDP. That's a part of why we're here today, to talk a bit about CDP. But of course, normative's engagement goes much, much, much further. So they are involved with the ISO working group that sets new standards for example, what does it mean to be a net zero aligned organization? Also member of the very important greenhouse gas scope 3 technical working group, the WBCSD's PACT framework, Project Perseus in the UK. So there are a lot of standards that need shaping, and normative is always at the forefront of shaping those. And speaking of standards, SBTi, the Science-Based Targets Initiative, might also ring a bell to many of you, and normative is closely aligned with SBTI. Luzia and team do an amazing job of helping our customers to set and get validated SBTs or SBTIs through the initiative. So working really across the ecosystem up to academia. So our friends from Oxford Net Zero, we always close with them as well. There are some good stats we can pull out of the hat for normative as to how other evaluation mechanisms see normative really at the forefront, such as Vedantix and Gartner, Forrester, to just name a few. Companies also trust normative, which is great to see, and the family of companies here is growing over time. And interesting for me also is always to look at what is the mix here, and we see really across the board, from finance to retail to hospitality. So it's an amazing ecosystem that normative was able to build up here across the sphere. So if you ask a question around who is the right target audience, there's really a broad spectrum, and large organizations struggling with their foundation, which is the data for the e-assessment for greenhouse gas accounting, is well advised to reach out to normative to get a first idea of what they could be doing for you, and the customer satisfaction score in the bottom left speaks volumes to Luzia and team, among others, of course, that work on this. So with this being said, just to set a bit this scene for those of you who have not come across normative but might have jumped on the topic of CDP first and foremostly, that was a bit of a background as to who is hosting this webinar. So thank you for normative for giving this platform here and hopefully sharing some good insights around CDP. But before we get there, let's have a look at the world of reporting and disclosure requirements. I would be curious to hear what your thoughts are, so also feel free to share those in the chat. But it's honestly a mess out there since earlier in this year, the latest. Last year, we've seen a huge ramp up in regulatory requirements, especially in the EU, UK as well. So companies felt overwhelmed. But what's happening now? Companies are mostly confused when I speak to them. There's a high degree of uncertainty in the market. I've just been pulling out a few of the major headlines as I see them evolving over the past months. And I do believe this resonates with quite a few of you. Again, feel free to push back here, but there's a lot of questions around what comes next. Before we all have to disclose, now no one, or where are we going? And front and center of this, especially for companies in the EU, again, I do see here people from Denmark, for example, from the Netherlands on the call, but it still affects UK organizations. The EU Omnibus Simplification Package, and I put it in air quotes for good reason. I'll talk about this in a second. The first headline, I think, already speaks volumes. Simplification promised, uncertainty delivered. That is a general sentiment that I hear a lot right now in the market. EU Omnibus set out to streamline regulations because we had the CSRD, CSDDD, CBAM, EU taxonomy all popping up in parallel pretty much. And companies were afraid they might have to double report, they might not really know how to approach it, what to prioritize. So it was a good step, a good intention, I believe, behind the omnibus. But then we got a bit lost along the way, potentially. So let's have a look at what we know about the omnibus, and then also what we expect. So starting with what we know. I really am a fan of kind of distilling a fact from fiction or from things that are not yet decided. So what we know right now is there's one proposal that has already been approved, and that was labeled the stop the clock proposal, meaning to press pause on a lot of the CSRD requirements, especially to give, first of all, the EU, but also companies a bit more time to adjust. So timelines have been pushed back by 2 years. So that has been first decided. A second proposal is right now under review and under negotiation, where it's about defining a revised, hopefully simplified, streamlined scope and reporting guidelines, so obligations. And those negotiations are still ongoing. I have a few updates there in a second. What is impacted here? So it is, as I said, the CSRD, which a lot of you might have come across already before, the EU taxonomy regulation, the so-called due diligence directive for supply chains, the CSDDD, and the CBAM, which regulates cross-border trading, so meaning preventing emissions from being outsourced to other countries and then goods services imported without paying the appropriate carbon tax, which might have been the case. So it would have been paid within the EU. So CBAM regulates this to also tax imports of goods and services into the EU. And again, the aim, a very good one, to reduce burden, complexity, and of course cost. And who does not want this? The problem, of course, is if there is now a lot of debate around how relevant the mechanisms will still be or remain after the omnibus is through. So what do we expect? What are right now the conversations? I think the first and foremost is really important to look at the CSRD, the significant raise that's being proposed in the employee threshold. So employee threshold means before companies over time, not immediately, but over time, from 250 employees onwards. So medium, maybe even small businesses, you can still say, would have been obliged to disclose under the CSRD. There are differences in the degree to which they had to or have to disclose the data. It's still the case, but they would have been included. Now the discussions are to raise the threshold. Some debates, some numbers floating around are right now around 1,000. Some are even up to 4,000, which would exclude more than 85% of companies that are currently obliged to report. So it looks, I just read a report this morning where it looks like 3,000 could actually be a realistic number that they target. And I also heard one comment that says this renders the CSRD pretty much meaningless. It's a fringe regulation at best because so many companies are not going to be included anymore. The CBAM will also likely be revised to exclude around 90% of importers. And again, you can argue it's a good point because a lot of small coffee bean producers, for example, they wouldn't have been able to apply to conform to the regulation because they just don't have access to the data and the means, the focus to provide the data being asked for under the CBAM. At the same time, if the idea behind CBAM was to appropriately tax imports, and now you exempt a lot of importers there, you can also ask the question, okay, why this regulation in the first place? And this comes then down to the CSDDD, so the due diligence directive for the supply chains, which is, I would say, so the way I put it here is it's uncertain overall. Its future is uncertain overall. There have been voices raised from Germany and France that pretty much say, I think we should just right away entirely stop this from being implemented in the first place. Others are a bit more nuanced, but we have to see. So right now, just this morning, the latest news is that by June 20th, I believe, we have a first set of simplified CSRD disclosure requirements. This is this ESRS that's set by the group EFRAG. So they are expected end or mid-June, so June 20th, I believe, was deadline. So there we get a better feeling for where we might be moving with the CSRD. But in essence, those are the key items on the menu of negotiation right now. So where does this leave us? I don't want to take up too much time about the reporting landscape because Luzia has, of course, and the potentially much more interesting case around CDP and disclosure frameworks, what you should be doing. I think to bridge also to this part of the webinar, I think the important crucial thing to realize here is do not wait for legislation. Do not wait for regulation to push you to get hold of your carbon accounting, of your environmental disclosures. Because ultimately, the legislation is always reactive. It's always almost hindsight, what they are implementing then. You want to be proactive. You as a business leader, you want to think ahead about where's my business going. And it is not just to prepare for some regulation. It is actually to set up your business for future success because the climate doesn't have a stop the clock button. The climate will continue to change. But if you have not been able to in advance assess your climate-related risk, for example, through your supply chain, seeing how market dynamics might be changing through climate-related disruptions, or just demands from investors and insurers, for example, that you have to interact with, you will be left fairly unprepared for the future and for the reality that is coming at all of you and all of us. So we look at this more from a business growth perspective than a reporting burden perspective. And with this, I would love to hand over to my colleague, Luzia, who can help you to understand that, okay, if you buy this, that you should be disclosing anyways, irrespective of the reporting requirements, Luzia can give you some guidance as to where to start and what's a good framework here. So Luzia, over to you.
Thanks a lot, and thank you so much for setting the scene. So as you heard, my name is Luzia, and I work as a senior climate strategy advisor at Normative. So today I'm excited to tell you more about how you can prepare for disclosure frameworks. And while I get started, again, feel free to use the chat and let us know, what are you preparing for? Are you preparing to report to CDP this upcoming reporting cycle, or is something else on top of your mind? Would love to hear from you. So despite the regulatory pushback that Dr. Alex guided us through, environmental reporting remains a key focus area for sustainability teams. They often report in line with several frameworks, which can be a time-consuming task. In this context, alignment of these frameworks can be a big time saver. CDP is fully aligned with the IFRS S2 standard, as well as the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, or in short, TCFD. Furthermore, it is partially aligned with the Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosures and the European Sustainability Reporting Standards, or short ESRS, which is part of CSRD. So when disclosing in line with CDP requirements, you're simultaneously covering some of the major international disclosure frameworks. At the heart of these disclosures is a company's greenhouse gas inventory, and this should be calculated using the standards of the Greenhouse Gas Protocol. So your greenhouse gas inventory builds the basis for environmental reporting, but more importantly, it informs your sustainability strategy. It enables you to track progress over time. So today I will share a couple of tips with you on how you can prepare for environmental disclosures and save time for the most important task, driving ambitious emissions reductions. And as I go through my tips, feel free to also drop your tips for successful disclosures in the chat. My first tip is create a working group. Most frameworks require disclosing information that goes beyond environmental metrics, and CDP is no exception. Many questions in the integrated modules require information on how environmental risks and opportunities are considered in financial planning. So as you create your working group, make sure to include members from relevant teams such as finance and distribute responsibilities. This will alleviate the pressure on the sustainability team, and it also enables you to give more detailed responses. Ensure that your greenhouse gas inventory is accurate and complete. As mentioned earlier, your greenhouse gas inventory builds the foundation of environmental reporting. So having a robust and transparent carbon accounting solution in place helps you to get quick access to the right data points. By the time you report your emissions, you should have full confidence in your calculations, and you should not have any data gaps. At Normative, we support our clients with a complete solution that combines rigorous carbon accounting, comprehensive compliance support, and strategic advisory from the climate strategy team. Our carbon accounting engine automates emissions calculations and gives you comprehensive insights into how these calculations were performed. This ensures that you have all your data in one place and no time gets lost having to document this information manually. Our climate strategy team is always available for expert advice on both carbon accounting or compliance with various frameworks. As you've seen on a previous slide, we work with a range of companies across industries. So we have industry-specific insights as well as insights into several reporting frameworks. My next tip is invest time to continuously increase the data quality of your company carbon footprint. This allows you to effectively track reduction progress. So when developing your baseline inventory, engage data owners from different departments and also set goals to increase data quality. The main challenge will be to engage your value chain, both to collect supplier-specific data and to drive reduction initiatives. With Normative, we offer our clients an integrated platform that allows various teams to collaborate in all stages of the journey. We simplify the resource-intensive process of data collection for our clients, and we deliver responsive and actionable insights to the whole organization. Our Engage module, furthermore, allows you to source data directly from your suppliers and use it in your Scope 3 calculations. And lastly, track your reduction progress. The purpose of environmental disclosure frameworks, such as CDP, is to increase transparency and to drive action. A granular greenhouse gas inventory will enable you to develop targeted emission reduction initiatives and track progress over time. Throughout the Normative platform, the main focus is to deliver data-driven insights for ambitious emissions reductions across your value chain. Our reduction module allows you to analyze the potential impact of reduction initiatives as well as the associated cost. This is especially useful in the context of CDP, which requires disclosing the financial effects of environmental opportunities. So with Normative, modeled impact comparisons, like the one you see here on this slide, that indicates emission reduction potential and associated costs can be easily shared across the organization to inform various teams. So why should you choose to disclose? Environmental disclosure frameworks such as CDP might feel cumbersome at times, but they really enable you to unlock tremendous value. A prerequisite to unlock this value is to have a solid data foundation and internal engagement. Having a granular greenhouse gas inventory in place and using tools like Normative to turn these insights into action can really help you to master environmental disclosures. So to do a quick recap, my suggested tips for your next reporting cycle: create a working group early on, engage your colleagues to collaborate on the disclosure together and really get that level of details in your disclosure. Ensure that your greenhouse gas inventory is accurate and complete, and make sure you have all the documentation in one place. Invest time to increase data quality, as only then you will effectively monitor your reduction progress. And lastly, track your progress and, of course, communicate it. So I hope these tips will help you when disclosing your emissions and responding to, for example, CDP. If you're curious about how Normative could help your organization with carbon accounting, or also with the advisory around frameworks like CDP, you're welcome to reach out to us. We're always happy to give you a demo, give you a glimpse into the Normative tool and take it from there.
Fantastic. Thank you, Alex and Luzia, for that insightful session on CDP reporting. I hope everyone found our presentation valuable today. As mentioned, please feel free to use the questions feature, as you can see at the bottom right corner of your screen, to ask any of our expert speakers on anything that was covered in today's presentation, or perhaps even how to manage your own CDP reporting. I have a couple of questions coming in. I have one question that came in earlier, Alex, Luzia. So it's, are there any significant changes in 2025 CDP disclosures that have changed besides the 2024 submissions? Is there anything any major thing that you would like to call out?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. I don't know how many first-time responders are in the call here today, but last year, so the 2024 disclosure had brought a lot of changes with it. So CDP launched a new disclosure portal. So previously, the whole process of disclosing was different, and then last year the portal was launched, allowing teams to collaborate and save responses in the portal, but also the questions were revised. So the structure of questions changed. The questionnaire was slimmed down, made a bit more specific. But this year, it is very aligned to the 2024 reporting cycle. So I would recommend, if there are any specifics you're curious about in the questionnaire, there's always a section in the beginning that outlines which questions have had updates and if these updates are minor or major, so that saves you some time. You don't need to go through the full questionnaire and compare it side by side. You can quickly jump to the update section and see, has anything I'm disclosing changed in requirements.
Brilliant. Thank you, Luzia. One question is, how can normative support with CDP submissions?
Yeah, I'm also happy to shed some light on that. So as mentioned, a company carbon footprint, your greenhouse gas inventory, is the base of then disclosing your emissions. So in the climate change module of CDP, you will need to provide granular information for your emissions, how they were calculated, so disclosing the type of input data that was used, the calculation methodology, the databases. So here, with normative, of course, we can support to calculate your company carbon footprint, but then the climate strategy team is also able to support you beyond that. So we work with clients also in the context of professional services. So we support then clients to fill in emissions data and calculation methodology details directly into the portal to save you some time. And we also review your responses in other governance-related sections and give you advice on, how can you improve your responses to achieve a higher score.
Super, fantastic. Thank you, Luzia. I have another question here, which is, what would be your recommendation for companies trying to improve their CDP score in the upcoming disclosure cycle?
Yeah, great question. So CDP, of course, gives you an overall score, but also a more detailed score per then module that you reported on. So I would really recommend to go through those detailed scorings and to assess where have you been scored high and where have you scored low, and then trying to improve those areas where you've scored low. And of course, not just improve your responses, but really look at your internal processes. Why have you scored low in this area? Can you improve the governance and how you approach a certain topic? So again, the intention of disclosure frameworks is to improve your processes and to set you up for long-term success, which Alex spoke about earlier.
Okay, brilliant. What's your advice on how to get started with calculating Scope 3 emissions?
Yeah, of course, Scope 3 emissions are a complex one to tackle. So my recommendation would be to just start. Find support, find a provider like Normative that can really be your partner on the journey and alleviate the admin tasks and automate the process for you. And then, engage in data collection. So collaborate across teams to get a hold of data owners and see what is available to get you started on the measurement.
Okay, brilliant. A specific question here. Can you submit CDP reports through Normative?
So we support you in disclosing through the CDP portal. At the moment, we don't have a built integration to CDP. This is something that was newly established last year from CDP when they launched their portal. So we're still looking into that. Might happen in the future. So keep an eye out for that.
Okay. And a long question here. Would the Normative team be involved in implementing changes that happens to compliant requirements with the customers? Is that implemented in the platform, and would there be updates that evaluate existing data and create a gap analysis?
That's a great question. So as mentioned, in the engine, you will have very granular information on your emissions and the sources that you've covered and your impact. So here, then the climate strategy team, we of course advise you in terms of completeness and robustness of your inventory. So we want to make sure that you are compliant with the greenhouse gas protocol's requirements when you go into disclosures.
Okay, brilliant. I've got one question in the chat group. I might as well ask it out as well. So we are a multinational company. How confident can we be that sites and suppliers in the US will support CDP? Does that work?
Yeah, great question. Of course, as a multinational group, you will need to collect data from all sites, and not getting access to data can really be, scary at times. Yeah, my recommendation would be start engaging then internal stakeholders early on. Try to make it as simple as possible to share information, to also then simplify the process, guide through requirements, and if no data gets shared, you still have the option to extrapolate, which is also allowed as per the greenhouse gas protocol. Of course, not great in terms of accuracy, but we will need to aim for completeness always.
And that's also to your earlier point, Luzia, right, about not letting the perfect become the enemy of the good. So you can always start. So even though your supply chain might not fully support you yet, but I do believe there are good pathways to incentivize suppliers across your network.
Super, brilliant. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Luzia and Alex, for this highly insightful packed half an hour today. I hope everyone in the session found it insightful and valuable. As mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, we will send an on-demand recording of the session via email to everyone who's registered for this session. So with that, I really appreciate it. If you have any other further questions, please send them through to marketing@normative.io. Luzia, Alex, any last words from you both?
Thanks a lot for joining.
Yes, thanks, and thanks for good questions.
Thank you. Bye for today.